Today we are going to have a look at the Canon EOS R6, whether it's worth picking it for video in 2022 and how it compares to the Canon EOS R and the pricier EOS R5. After 1 year of using it for video shooting, I'll tell you what I like and dislike about this camera, and in the end I'll make a quick comparison to the R5 and R, so stay tuned. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Lucas and we are making tutorials and gear reviews here. How are you doing in 2022? Everything good so far? I hope it is, because I'm excited to bring you the review of the Canon EOS R6 after 1 year of using it for video. I want to share my thoughts about my experience with this camera so far. It's not going to be a high-tech review explaining every specification. I want to keep it simple and make it a real-world user review. I wanna make it clear that Canon does not sponsor this video. I bought the R6 for my money because I like using Canon cameras. Mainly because of their huge ecosystem of accessories and the ability to borrow Canon equipment almost everywhere. Another thing I consider important is how fast you can dial your preferred settings on set. And Canon wins for me in this department. Menus are clear to understand, easy to navigate. You don't need to dive deep in the menu structure and struggle with shortcuts like on Sony cameras. Besides that, the camera's ergonomic shape fits well into my hands and all controls are placed logically and in easy reach. I upgraded to the R6 from Canon EOS R and I'm glad I did it. I'll tell you why in this review. Let's start with design. The most noticeable changes compared to EOS R are on the top and the back of the camera. The wheel on the back replaced the 4-direction dial from EOS R. The wheel can be used to change the camera settings, navigate the menu, and scroll through the videos in the playback menu. Another handy addition is the joystick, which can change the focus point. You can also move the focus point by swiping on the screen while looking into the viewfinder, but I find the joystick more practical. On the EOS R6, the round dial replaces the top display from EOS R. I found the display on EOS R nicer and more useful, but the analog mode dial is okay. The R6's body is thicker due to image stabilization, and the on-off switch has a new, more practical, smaller shape. What I like about this camera are still up-to-date video specs both on paper and in reality. While you have no 8K video recording option, you can capture 4K up to 60 frames per second without a crop in full frame mode. To be precise, there is a small crop in 4K, as you can see it here, but it's negligible. The image is very clear and has about 12 stops of dynamic range with a C-Log 3 profile. C-Log 2 would be a better option in terms of dynamic range, but Canon keeps this profile reserved for their cinema cameras. I'll come to the image quality later. Now I wanna talk a bit about the in-body image stabilization. EOS R5 and R6 were the first two bodies from Canon offering the IBIS. I was a Panasonic GH5 user and I loved it for the steady image. I used also Sony full frame and APS-C cameras, and I have experience with Fujifilm. I can say that the IBIS provided by Canon in the R6 and R5 bodies is the closest match to the stabilization of the Panasonic GH5, but in full frame world. When EOS R6 came out, I had the chance to try it out, and based on that experience, I decided to buy my R6 to upgrade from EOS R. Canon claims the stabilization compensates for up to 8 stops when paired with stabilized RF lens, which is plenty. However, the IBIS works also with non-stabilized EF and RF lenses. This way you can shoot handheld with any lens of your choice. From my experience, this kind of stabilization is more than sufficient for most run and gun shooting situations I'm in. Another useful feature is the zebra setting. This way it's easier to see the exposure of your image. Most people use the zebras to check the highlight clipping on the video. While this is a useful scenario, I'll tell you another tip no one is talking about. The trouble I was often facing was exposing the skin correctly when shooting in lock profiles. But you can use the Zebra to expose the skin correctly, and I'll share with you how. When shooting lock, set the Zebra in camera at about 60%. Then expose the skin so you don't see lines filling the face. And voila, the skin now should have the correct exposure after grading your footage. In terms of video image quality, the R6 doesn't record raw video as the R5 does, but the quality is very good. 4K image is sharp, and thanks to the C-Log 3 and 10-bit 422 color, you can tweak it to your liking without introducing image artifacts. R6 records huge video files which contain plenty of detail. Picture is very clean even when you zoom in 400%. Dynamic range is not that wide as in the newest Sony hybrid bodies, but the image is awesome when you expose and grade it correctly. R6 offers recording in 4K up to 60 frames per second and in Full HD up to 120 FPS. Every frame rate can be recorded internally in C-Log 3 with 10-bit color. As I mentioned, there is a slight crop in 4K compared to 180p, but is nothing to worry about. To record 120 FPS or 100 FPS, you need to enable high frame rate mode in Full HD. It has no crop and records without the sound. The slow motion image in 1080p is sharp enough for commercial use. When playing back the slow-mo clip, you can preview the actual slow motion so you directly see the result before downloading the video to computer. In terms of codecs on R6, you can choose from IPB and IPB Lite compression. While IPB Lite has a significantly smaller data rate, there won't be much room for manipulating the image compared to standard IPB. I would like to mention also autofocus here because it was drastically improved compared to EOS R. On the R6 there are new autofocus modes. You can track eyes, people, animals, and after the latest firmware update, Canon also added vehicles. Autofocus speed is stellar and it tracks the subjects without hesitation. For these talking headshots, I use autofocus with eye tracking and it's very reliable for me. Thanks to dual pixel autofocus, the camera finds the subject without hesitation, and when changing focus point by tapping on the display, the transition is smooth without any hunting. Another very useful feature very few people are talking about is the built-in time-lapse mode. You can let the camera create the time-lapse video for you. This feature is so huge time saver for me every time I need to capture fast passing of time. You need to set up how long the camera should be shooting and the interval between the shots. EOS R6 calculates the length of the final clip, and when you're satisfied, just tap the shutter button to return to the shooting mode. You don't need to worry about flickering because the camera fixes the first image's exposure and it stays the same during the entire shoot. When the exposure on the scene is changing dynamically, you can let the EOS R6 to adapt to the changing exposure. This feature is common with the EOS R. R6 contains one more feature called interval timer. This allows you to shoot time-lapse as individual photos in RAW, to edit them and compile the time-lapse clip later. However, this requires a lot of post-processing, but on the other hand, the resulting video will have much better dynamic range. If you liked the video so far, please consider hitting that like button to show the YouTube algorithm that this video makes sense. There are so many more great features on this camera, making the life of a video content creator easier. However, to be honest, there are also some aspects I don't like about this camera. 1 month after I bought the new EOS R6, the viewfinder broke. It was showing bright vertical blue line across the entire screen. Fortunately, the camera was completely usable, everything worked fine, and it happened in the middle of commercial shoot. At first I was concerned, but no files were damaged and I successfully finished the shoot. The authorized service center changed the viewfinder display under warranty and now the camera is working fine. But if I had no backup body, I would stay without the camera during the repair period. Another issue I have with the EOS R6 is overheating when shooting 4K video. I'm able to record about 40 minutes of video with some breaks. When the breaks are not long enough, the camera overheats. I saw the temperature warning a few times in recent months. Unfortunately, the only solution to this is to wait. which is not very convenient when you're on the client shoot. I'm currently on firmware version 1.5 and this issue exists only when shooting long-form content like interviews or long speeches. Now what else? There's no top display on the R6. Sure, I could get the pricier R5 to have the top screen, but strangely, cheaper EOS R has it and the R6 doesn't. I got used to it on the EOS R and now I'm missing it. Next thing in the issue list is the H.265 codec. The files this camera produces are very difficult to edit unless you have super powerful PC or one of the M1 Max. On Apple Silicon the 4K playback and editing is stellar in every video editor, but when you have an older computer you're out of luck here. The only solution to get smooth editing is making proxies. What should be also improved is the rolling shutter. It's better than in 4K on EOS R, but it's still visible. If you want to get rid of rolling shutter in post-processing, there's an option for that in Final Cut Pro or in Premiere Pro, but the results may vary. And this correction is quite heavy on computer power. The best option would be to minimize the effect directly in camera, for sure. And probably the last thing which could be improved is the process of setting the custom white balance for video. Canon simplified custom white balance setup for photography, but unfortunately there's no such thing in video mode. You need to switch back to photography mode, navigate to the white balance setting, pick custom and pick the white balance target by pressing the trash button. Then you need to switch back to video mode and dial the custom white balance and done. Now we are heading to the conclusion. So, is the Canon EOS R6 worth it for video in 2022? The short answer is yes, definitely, despite some issues. For the price, I think it's an awesome piece of gear. Without hesitation, the R6 can deliver crisp and good-looking 4K image. If you consider an upgrade from EOS R, you won't be disappointed with the R6. If you need blazing fast autofocus, need to detect different subjects, need rock-steady in-body image stabilization, dual card slots, C-Log 3, more ergonomic control, then yes please, make this your new camera. However, if you shoot mostly photography and cropping your images, the EOS R with 10 more megapixels will probably provide you a better service. I miss the top screen here, but the top dial is something I can live with. Don't get me wrong. The EOS R is still a great camera, it doesn't overheat, I made some client video work with it and it was always fast to operate and reliable even with one card slot. If you think the R6 won't be good enough for video with the 4K support and for some reason you need to step up to 8K recordings and RAW video support, then the EOS R5 might be for you. You're going to pay premium for features like already mentioned 8K support, higher bitrate, all-eye compression, CF Express card support and the top display, of course. On the other hand, you will need to have a more powerful computer since the 8K is overkill to play it, not saying about editing it. You'll need more storage and to buy more expensive memory cards. It might be overheating more than the R6, so using the R5 comes with other added expenses that might be not obvious initially. All other features are the same on both cameras. So make a smart choice, and if you're not sure which camera to pick, rent the R6 on R5 for a couple of days and then decide by yourself. Both cameras will make a great service to working professionals, creatives and video enthusiasts. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more photo and video reviews and tutorials in the future. See you next time!